Why the maintenance policy? I think that in our part of the world, we are very good at, let's say, developing or bringing up infrastructure. But one of the things that we don't do very well is to maintain these things after they've been developed or constructed. So it is very important to try and find out why that is, and then try and put in measures that will help to solve that problem. Very often when you travel outside, you see that things are maintained properly. Even if a building is 50 years old, 100 years old, you go and the building still looks very good. I went to a university outside in the US, and then I was asking myself, how come the walls are always white? It's like you don't see any dirt, or there's that culture of maintenance that has been imbibed in the students. And it makes them aware that they need to do the right thing. And apart from that, I'm sure they also put in measures in place that things are replaced as quickly as they break down. Paintings are done as often as possible. And these are some of the things that we wish to encourage as a people. So without much ado, I want to welcome our policy champion in the person of Professor Mrs. Frances Darko. Thank you.
Thank you, Sazu, for those of you who are as old as he is. You know that I used to worry you a lot when you were at pharmacy, when NOC, UITS started as NOC at pharmacy. And we are glad that you have invited us here today. The policy champions are groups, not individuals. I'm only the chair of one of the groups that deals with the maintenance policy. So one of our is Dr. Nathaniel. There are four of us. Mariam will introduce us. So today, Dr. Mrs. Mariam L. Buachi Jesse will take the presentation. So let's welcome her, and then afterwards, if there are questions, we'll all chip in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. A very good morning to us all, once again, all protocol duly observed. As Prof mentioned, I am El Boachi Jesse, and I'll be making this presentation on behalf of Group G within the next half hour or so. And this is the maintenance policy, that is KNUST policy number 13. There are a number of them. And our chair is Prof. Frances Osudeko. You've already met her. Other members are Professor Nathaniel Boadi and Dr. Samuel Ato and Akofo. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we all agree that policies that upgrade teaching space, develop student facilities, increase the functionality of research infrastructure, and improve the presentation of the external campus and environment of KNUST are critical components of the sustenance of students, staff, and visitors of this great university. Well, KNUST owns and operates an extensive portfolio of buildings. Currently, KNUST, we have a number of buildings and infrastructure assets, and they are utilized to deliver teaching and research and all our other services. And the quality of this research and teaching programs is closely impacted by the state of the maintenance of the university's infrastructure facilities. As Mr. Azu mentioned, we are good at putting up structures, but when it comes to maintenance, how do we stand? And these assets of KNUST can be categorized into a number of groupings. So we have teaching and teaching research and other academic facilities, especially UITS, staff and student accommodation. We have the halls and a number of hostels, administrative buildings, ancillary buildings and facilities such as the hospital, manufacturing units, printing, press, and a number of workshops and so many other facilities. And then, of course, we have the roadworks, bridges, and other related services, electricity and water services, landscaping and horticultural works, recreational and relaxational parks. We have our Pajo Stadium and other places, sewage and waste disposal plants, all other facilities and physical structures within the KNUST campus and beyond. So we have campuses at Moray and other places in Accra and elsewhere. So what are the specific objectives of this maintenance policy? They are numerous, but they are summed up here. To provide user-friendly, high-quality, and accessible service through appropriate maintenance practices. To establish performance measures and timescales for the delivery of services with the resources available, and to ensure that high priority is given to safeguarding safety and security of the students, the staff, tenants, members of the public, employees, and agents in their occupation and use of buildings and infrastructures of KNUST. And also to achieve value for money, and thus ensure that KNUST's assets are efficiently and effectively maintained to support the university's strategic objectives. So these are the specific objectives of KNUST's maintenance policy. So the policy guidelines and actions, what is in the policy? Equality and diversity. We all agree that where we are in the world, we cannot do anything without looking at equality and diversity. And so fair and equal treatment for all stakeholders. That is, if you're a staff, student, tenant, or a service provider of the university, should be in consonance with the disability law and KNUST's disability policy. So a few years ago, maybe some of our buildings did not have certain ramps, but now you can see that we have a number of them, especially in the new buildings coming up. And then there should be no discrimination against any on grounds of race, color, ethnic or national origin, language, religion, belief, employment status, physical ability, or mental health. And the university shall positively endeavor to achieve fair outcomes for all. So when it comes to the maintenance policy, equality and diversity are looked at. Then health and safety. Provisions of the university health and safety policy shall be applied because there's a health and safety policy. So the provisions in there shall be applied in all aspects of implementation of the maintenance policy, particularly in respect of responsibility to students, to employees, and to service providers. So if we bring people from outside, say, to paint our buildings, we have to make sure that the health and safety policy is adhered to. Then authorization of maintenance and service. This is very important because most of the time, some of us may have been caught somewhere. Procurement and execution of all maintenance works, including associated goods and services, shall be authorized by the Director of Works. So if you are the head of an institution or a dean or something and there is some maintenance work to be done, please, you need to involve the Director of Works. You cannot do an out-of-pocket something and later go and report on it. Okay. And the Director of Works and Fiscal Development subsequently will be referring to him or her as the Director of Works. So irrespective of the scope, size, nature, and source of funding. So maybe you have some IGF, but still you have to consult the Director of Works. Okay. Now, maintenance work shall be authorized within a general program outline approved by the Vice Chancellor. No individual acting on behalf of student hall of residence, unit, section, department, faculty, or college, or their own behalf shall commit the university to any maintenance cost without seeking approval through the procedures laid down in this policy. Such services may be denied by the Vice Chancellor or charged against that individual who ordered the procurement. So this is very important. I know most of the time we have our own ways of fixing one or two things, but this is the policy. Again, looking at the standards of maintenance and repair and replacement cycles, these shall be in accordance with national specification requirements. So KNUST doesn't stand alone. We are part of Ghana. So if there's anything that's supposed to be fixed, it has to be in accordance with national specification requirements. And KNUST standard setting will have input from staff, students, and users. So the performance measures of service providers shall be based on these standards. Collaborative effort should result in a set of standards that are likely to suit the majority of people who use campus facilities, also bearing in mind the disability policy, health and safety, and other policies. Once an agreement is reached on a set of standards, they should not be changed until the time of the next formal review. So things like colors of paint, types of lighting, floor finishing, safety measures like burglar proofing, frequency of replacement of fittings, painting cycles, and many other characteristics should be comfortable for as many users as possible. And the Director of Work shall establish replacement cycles for various fittings, elements, and components. So, when it comes to maintenance priorities and then categories, there is a beautiful table in the maintenance policy that lists the priorities of maintenance works with ratings from 1 being the highest and 4 being the lowest, with associated categories. So you can have priority 1, and the response will be within 1 hour during normal working hours, and then within 2 hours after normal working. So there's that table. We'll talk about it later. So what are the maintenance priorities and categories? Works Control Center is established at the maintenance unit and supervised by the Director of Works, and it shall receive all work requests and assign priorities according to the table that I spoke about. And the priorities are allocated depending upon the category that the work requested falls into. So as I said, you can have a priority response 1, whereby that should be done within 1 hour if it's normal working hours, and within 2 hours if it's after normal. So such category can be serious safety or environmental hazard or incident, serious asset damage resulting in irreplaceable catastrophic loss to teaching and research, fire or major leaks, widespread loss of power, and so on. And of course, we have other priorities such as response within 5 working days. So that one can be maybe the asset requires maintenance, but it's not urgent. So there is that table. Again, unanticipated maintenance work shall be handled on a case-by-case basis, looking at the category and the priority level. And emergency maintenance will receive an outlined priority response time. That is the time it takes the maintenance unit to first respond to the work requested. So there are different categories and priority levels when it comes to maintenance. There is also something called the annual maintenance plan. And this one shall be prepared for each category of facility by the various administrators of the student halls of residence, the units, the sections, the departments, faculties, directors, setting out priorities for maintenance. So if you are the unit head, you need to set out the priorities for maintenance of your facility. And this shall facilitate estimation of resources for proper planning and budgeting, and to lead to a categorization of the maintenance works under routine, periodic, and emergency maintenance. So you can have routine maintenance schedule, a periodic one, and then the emergency one that you couldn't have known that it would happen. So a state or a condition survey to establish the extent of disrepair of all categories of buildings and infrastructure shall be conducted every 3 years. So I hope UITS does this every 3 years. Mr. Azu? Yes. Thank you. Okay. So what are the source of funds? You remember that earlier we said that irrespective of the source of funding, it has to be reported to the Director of Works. So what are some of the source of funding for maintenance works of the university? Of course, the academic facility user fee. Income from rent deductions. There are some staff who occupy residences on campus. Public-private partnership arrangements. Government support. Donations from KNUST's development partners, including contractors and alumni. Other IGF, other internally generated funds. And then a minimum percentage from GET Fund and IGF and other sources are set aside for maintenance works, depending upon the maintenance load established. So these are some of the sources of funds for maintenance works on KNUST campus. So as stakeholders, what are our responsibilities? KNUST is, as an institution, shall abide by the tenancy agreements, bylaws, and statutes, and shall fund the procurement of all maintenance works, goods, and services as required by law, regulations, and other statutory requirements. And for us, as tenants or users, we are supposed to promptly report damage. So Prof mentioned that when UITS was LOC, was it NOC or LOC? NOC, and in pharmacy, the old block, she used to worry you a lot. It means she was promptly reporting very frequently. Maybe that's why they moved. I don't know. Okay, I was also one of the culprits. Okay, and to ensure access to service providers for repairs, maintenance, and inspection, to take reasonable care of properties. So just because we have access to certain things, certain cables, doesn't mean we should just destroy them and every 2 weeks we want our cables changed. No. To ensure personal possessions against loss. So here, for example, if you occupy a staff bungalow, yes, the university owns the building, but whatever is in there is for you. So if there's, God forbid, a fire, you should have insured your personal property in there, not the university. So as the tenant or the user, you are supposed to insure your personal possessions against loss due to fire, flood, theft, accident, and so on. Again, for a service provider, all undertaking maintenance works on KNUST properties, these are the service providers, so whether they are painters or contractors, whoever they are supposed to carry identification badges. They are supposed to wear uniforms and keep their premises secure at all times. So if you walk into your corridor close to your office and you see somebody who says, I'm here to repair the AC or whatever, you have a right to demand identification because the person may even be a thief. So these are their responsibilities. And they are supposed to make good any damage caused in the course of their activities. Sometimes they are here to do A, but in the end they destroy B and C, and they leave it. And the university has to spend money to maintain B and C. And then they are also supposed to remove all waste debris from the premises. So sometimes you see that some people come and fix something and then leave a whole lot of mess. They are actually supposed to clean it before they leave. And also they are supposed to comply with all relevant health and safety legislation and bylaws to avoid danger to tenants, visitors, and members of the public. So if they raise a scaffold that can fall on our cars at the car park, we can't allow that. They are supposed to make sure that it is safe. They have demarcated the area, put appropriate signs that please don't park here. Otherwise, if a metal falls on someone's car and breaks the windshield, who is supposed to pay for it? And we have a right to inform them that this is what they are supposed to do. Also, they are supposed to deliver their services in line with the service standards set out in the relevant contract documentation. So, how do we report for maintenance works or execution of maintenance works? There is something called a maintenance information system. I don't know if UITS is in charge of that. Are you in charge of that? You are not aware, okay. A maintenance information system. which shall be established with the installation of appropriate equipment and networking to electronically disseminate information concerning maintenance. Has anybody used this maintenance information system before? No. If UITS don't know about it, then I doubt that the university knows about it. Okay. Pardon? It shall be established. Okay. All Works Control Center staff receiving repair reports shall be trained to deal with requests efficiently, effectively, and courteously, and to accurately categorize the repair requested. So that table I was talking about, I think that, yes, it will be a collaboration between maintenance and UITS to have it electronically done. Okay. Procurement. This is also another area where spending officers may clash heads. The requirements of the Public Procurement Act shall be adhered to in the engagement of all contractors, suppliers, and consultants in providing works, goods, and services respectively, except where the magnitude and complexity of the work demand external contractors or consultants. All maintenance works shall be procured and undertaken by the maintenance unit. So even with the external ones, the Director of Works and the Vice Chancellor, they have to initiate it. We cannot go and then procure external contractors. Then there are also site supervisors, because if you just say that maintenance work is going on, it's happening, it can go on for years and decades. So there are site supervisors. And these site supervisors shall be assigned to regularly monitor progress of work to ensure that service providers or contractors adhere to contract conditions and existing maintenance standards set out in this maintenance policy. And they shall be the representatives of the Director of Works, and the person can be an architect, a quantity surveyor, an engineer, a clerk of works, or any person appointed by the Director of Works to offer supervisory or consultancy services, and shall ensure that the completed work is in consonance with KNUC's maintenance standards. So, again, there's the situation whereby it's important that you have someone supervising the work. Otherwise, a contractor may come, start one work here, go for another contract, and be moving the same workers around, and, value for money. So the other roles of the site supervisors are that they have to have regular visits. So if the person is an architect, an engineer, a quantity surveyor, the person may visit the site at least twice a week. If the person is a clerk of works, then the person shall visit the site at least 4 times a week. And the team of site supervisors shall submit what we call a midterm maintenance report midway, unless the project is so brief, maybe it's a 1 day or 2 days something. Otherwise, they have to submit a midterm maintenance report as well as a final project report to the Director of Works. I think with this, maintenance is going to improve in the university. And the project architect shall be assigned the responsibility of collating and compiling such reports from team members for onward submission to the Director of Works. So we are not just going to be doing maintenance, but there's going to be supervision and then reports to keep records of whether the work was done as it was supposed to be. And after completion of the maintenance work, there's something called post-completion monitoring. So here, the reports submitted shall be used in addition to compiling post-completion monitoring reports or surveys to inform and also to enhance future maintenance works, as well as aid in future review of existing maintenance policy. So this policy is going to be reviewed. And a proportion of repairs and maintenance work shall be randomly inspected across all categories after completion and in line with KNUST standards of repairs and relevant contract conditions. So even after, let's say, the building has been renovated and handed over to whichever directorate or faculty or college, there should be that monitoring so that next time they can report on whether this particular contractor did a good job or not. Otherwise, we'll keep giving contracts to people who, after 2 months or 6 weeks of handing over, we have the same issues cropping up. Again, there's something called a user or customer feedback and user satisfaction survey that shall be used to monitor and improve performance. So the users of that facility or whatever was maintained have to fill this survey, and it can be used to monitor and improve performance of the maintenance unit. And where a problem is identified with the performance of a service provider, this shall be dealt with in accordance with the terms of the relevant contract or accepted goods practice. So it's not that you've received a contract and then you can perform it anyhow. This post-completion monitoring and the reports will be used to assess the service provider. So we are almost there. Under this policy too, there is something called adaptations and chargeable repairs. KNUST operates an adaptation policy to meet the needs of the tenants whose circumstances require addition of specialized facilities or equipment in complying with the relevant legislation as indicated in the disability policy. So you may be occupying a bungalow, and maybe if you may be challenged in a certain way, so we have to put in certain things to make it as easily accessible for you and your family. And the tenants or users shall not be permitted to make alterations or additions to any facilities unless with written consent of the Director of Works. So you cannot make an extension to your office or your bungalow or whichever facility that you're using because it's a new style that you've seen somewhere. You can't do that without the permission of the Director of Works. And if the above is not followed, the Director of Works shall charge the tenant for any work necessary at the end of the tenancy to return the facility to its previous condition. So arrears and debts policy has been established, and you'll be charged if you go and do an extension to your bungalow or your office or anything that is not authorized by the Director of Works. So please, let's keep that in mind, because they need to revert the facility to how it used to be before you altered it. So as I mentioned, this policy is going to be reviewed, and the Estates Management Committee shall periodically review and monitor the implementation of the arrears and debts policy as well as the maintenance policy. And its terms of reference shall also include the establishment of standards of maintenance, level of funding, and resolution of misunderstanding on issues of maintenance. So sometimes there's a bit of misunderstanding when it comes to some of the maintenance issues. So we have arrived. Thank you for your attention. And my chair is here, so we are ready for questions. Thank you.
Well, let's do it better for her. Thank you so much, Doc. If you are here and you have any questions, anything baffling your mind that you want further explanation, you can let us know. If you raise your hand, the microphone will be brought to your end.
I think it is not in our culture to send feedback. You as users, we might just talk about it, but we don't report to the appropriate places. But it's important because even though you might think that it doesn't matter, you will not be taken seriously. Sometimes you are taken seriously. I remember, a few years back when I was still very young and, full of enthusiasm. And there was a contractor on campus doing, maintaining the roads, and they hadn't put any sign as to the fact that this road is closed, and it was in the residential area. So when I got there and I realized that, I saw one of the engineers wanted to talk to him. The man said, "Get off the road, get off the," he was very rude. And because there was one of their bitumen things coming. You get up there, and even spoiled my car. So I decided that I would go and report to the administration, and I did. And so they sent me back what they did about, they wrote to the contractors, the man wrote that I had abused something, whatever. But the next contract that was being awarded was not awarded to that company. So even though we might think that nobody will bother, we have to, because that helps in improving the campus that we all live in and we utilize. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for the information that has been imparted to us this morning. My concern has to do with the role of facility managers, as has to do with the maintenance policy, because throughout the presentation, I never heard mention of a facility manager. Case in point, where we work, our washroom has 3 urinals, and 2 of them are not functioning well. So we have notices pasted on them. But we don't know whether it goes through our head of department that gets to the director of works, because there's a lot of mention of the director of works to, as it were, oversee the maintenance of the structure. But we know there's a facility manager who is supposed to periodically be checking, and if possible, he has to report to the director of works about such incidences. So if we go to the washroom and it's not working, and it's not healthy that you have only 1 urinal working, it has a notice on it, either he himself is not gone there to see it, and we also do not know who it is, from whose budget, as we spoke about, going to be used to fix it. Sometimes you have water overspilling, choking the drains and all of that. So I would want to know where the facility manager fits in all that. Thank you.
I believe the facility manager is under the head of the unit or the department, And so, there's a hierarchy. In every place there are hierarchies. So you need to find out. But definitely the facility manager is under the head of department. So if you report to the facility manager and nothing comes out of it, then you go higher. That's what should be done. But like I said, often we don't have that culture. We feel that, and then I'll be the bad person. But if we all see it as our responsibility towards ourselves in the first place and others, then we will take that extra mile and make sure that things are done properly. So where there are facility managers, they are still under the head of department or the head of the unit, depending on the setup.
Please, any more questions?
Let me ask a question. From what we have just heard, do we think that the maintenance policy will work? Or is working?
I think anybody can give an answer.
It's very difficult to say because there has to be some kind of way we measure it. And there's no reporting on that. So my immediate question is, what standards do we have? Because I heard you talk about standards. So do we have a standard for maintenance? And when people are coming to maintain our buildings or our assets, do we avail it to them so that they are guided by that? So those are some of the things I asked. And I also want to touch on what he said. You know, we are in the Kesley Hayford building. It's a big facility, serves a lot of people. And I think, yeah, in a way, you're right when we say we don't have that culture of what, following up. So even I myself asked that question, but I've not followed up to even know who the facility manager of the building is. And I realized that there are many heads of department in that building. So in the end, you don't know who is really responsible for the whole building. So it creates some kind of confusion as to who is supposed to maintain. So maybe we have to have responsibilities for what. But then the simple answer to it is that the facility manager who is supposed to do it. So I don't know whether there should be a designated office for every facility manager. For instance, I mean, maybe this might be too much of an extreme example. I went to the World Bank office one time, and then I happened to go to the facility manager's office. He happens to be my mate from way back, and he has a very dedicated office. You come, and then what? You see him, whatever problem you have, what? He details it and writes it nicely in a book. And so you can see it's a proper setup. I don't know if that kind of thing can apply here. Because as I speak now, I don't know a dedicated office for a facility manager at the Kesley Hayford building. I don't know if other buildings also have that kind of model. But if you do, it will probably make things a lot easier. For instance, if I'm walking into the building from the entrance and I smell something foul, I should be able to report to the facility manager. And I also like the idea that we have an MIS of sort. So the facility manager can what? Report that into what? That system. And then a higher authority can follow up to see that those issues are resolved. I think this kind of thing, it takes time, it's culture. But I think it's good that we are beginning to have what? Those conversations so that gradually we build that culture. Thank you.
Please, any addition to that?
Thank you very much. Your observation is right. So I want to share a positive experience with these facility managers. Currently, the College of Health Sciences, where I am, has a college facility manager, and my faculty of pharmacy also has a facility manager. So I was in a meeting somewhere, and certain things were being procured, and they mentioned something that's supposed to be a splash guard. Now, for us females, we wouldn't have any idea because we don't even have that type of urinal. But for the males, I hear there's a plastic. That's when I learned about it for the first time, that there's something that they put in there and it prevents splashing or something. And it was the facility manager that brought in that request. And now, for example, if you smell something, I entered my washroom and the POP had come down. I just called the facility manager, the faculty level. And if it's above him, he will just call the college. So I think if we're able to identify them and push them to work, I think they are prepared to work. So that's a positive experience that I've had for the past few months with our faculty and college facility managers. So I don't know who the facility manager for your building is, but I think if we're able to identify them and we get them to work, they will even appreciate it and probably do more. I think they are sitting down and maybe we are not approaching them, so they are also relaxing. Okay, but does anybody know who the facility manager for that building is? You know the person? Okay, have you been bombarding them with work? Okay, so he's involved. He's hiding somewhere, but when you identify them and you push them with their request, they will work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In your presentation, you talked about service providers should identify themselves clearly by wearing of badges and the rest. My concern is there a regulated way of ensuring that, or any service provider can just identify themselves with any tag? Because we had such experiences in the College of Science, where they just wear something, and by the time we realized, a number of projectors got missing. So I believe that there should be a way to regulate that. And issuing of such badges should also be fast. So I don't know what you can say about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are right. The main reason for that is that, as you said, people pretend that they are service providers, come in here and rob us. And I know for a fact that, for example, those who have been constantly working with the university, they are issued with IDs. They are even able to use to access the access control points and the Bomsu Gate and those things. So I think to add to this, we should make sure that such people are given the ID cards promptly, so that it won't be that they started on Monday and the ID card will be ready on Thursday. And so people can use that window to do certain negative things. So I think that's a very good suggestion. They are given identification, but from the university, it's just that, like you said, maybe there are some delays. But the regular ones have them. Okay, thank you.
I guess mine is a contribution towards this. I think this is the first time I have seen it since I started working in KNUS, where I've seen this maintenance policy summit. And if we get all the community involved, and especially get maintenance to change the culture, I think it's a cultural revolution. Once we start it and we are there by the rules, as you said, the policies and the procedures are there too. I think we all come on board to make it work. So that's my little contribution towards this policy summit.
Thank you again for your presentation. I may have missed the first slide or so. So I'm wondering about the different types of assets in the university and whether all of them are captured in this policy. For example, buildings and related fixtures have been talked about a lot by the Director of Works, etc., facility manager. Then we have things like roads, street lights, etc. That's also there. But I would think that Pajo and the sports facilities, I don't know if they are directly here or the sports directorate has a role to play in there. For example, vehicles. That has something to do with the transport department. But is it stated here that those assets will be taken care of by the transport department? Then when we come to our section, we have a whole lot of unique IT infrastructure that has its own set of procedures, our technical equipment. Is it directly in here, or it's a different section who has to take care of those specialized items? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the benefits of the fact that you missed some of the slides, I'll repeat the assets that are categorized in this particular policy. So the first one is teaching, research, and academic facilities. The next one is staff and student accommodation, administrative buildings, ancillary buildings and facilities such as the hospital, manufacturing, printing, workshop, etc., roadworks, bridges and other related services, electricity and water services, landscaping and other horticultural works, recreational and relaxation grounds or parks, sewage and waste disposal, and all other facilities and physical structures owned by the university within the main Kumasi campus and beyond. So these are the ones that are captured in the maintenance policy. But as Prof mentioned, our facility managers report to the heads of the units. So if your facility manager, let's say for UITS, you give him a report and it's a specialized area, the head, together with the facility manager, will consult the Director of Works, and I think the head will even make suggestions as to the people or the company that he feels can take care of this in an appropriate way. For example, if you are, let me use something I'm familiar with. If you are procuring chemicals for some labs, you see, we have the procurement system, but the users will make an input because they have dealt with certain companies that have good quality chemicals, some do not deliver, and so on and so forth. But the important thing is that the maintenance or the Director of Works may say that, oh, this whole year I've not received any report, but things are going wrong. So when these things are documented, then we can hold certain people responsible. So for example, if you document in the MIS that you have A, B, C, D issues as UITS, and then there's an issue on campus, and we complain, and we see that you made that report, then we know who to hold responsible. Otherwise, if we decentralize it so much and we don't involve the director of works, then we will just be playing that blame game. This is UITS, is works, is maintenance, you see. So we are just trying to come up with a policy that can centralize it and then hold us responsible. Thank you.
On that, I think that it's good that you scoped it, but perhaps wouldn't the title like maybe facilities maintenance policy be more appropriate? Because the word maintenance is very, very generic. So that's just a thought that occurred to me. Because like he said, there are a lot of things that we can maintain, from vehicles to computers to a whole lot of stuff. So that's just my little contribution there.
Some are aware or not aware. You know, there are a number of policies that have been drawn up. Most of them have not been utilized. They've not been tested. Let me put it that way. They've not been tested. And that's why there's this dissemination going on, so that people will use it. And if there are loopholes, there are suggestions for improvement and all that, we can improve on them. So that, like Mariam said, things will not be piecemeal, but then the university can have an overarching way of doing things. And then the various units can do their own specialized things. It's a way of getting value for money. Because if everybody does their own thing, it's going to be more expensive for the university than if it had an overarching policy. But the thing is that we need to realize that it's a policy. And so there can be variations as we go down. But we need to be mindful that this is how things should be done for, get value for money. I think that's it. In a resource-constrained environment like ours, we cannot let everybody do their own thing, because it just doesn't work economically for us. Okay. Do we have any more contributions, suggestions? I mean, the purpose of this is not just to give you, this is it, that's how it should be done. But bring ideas, and let's see how we can improve it, and also use it, and let's see whether it's feasible. That's why I asked my question. Do we think this will work? Or maybe it won't work. I remember when I was head of department, I was asked to prepare a budget. I used to say, why should I prepare the budget? I mean, you sit down, rack your brains and everything. When it comes, what you want, they won't give you. So why should I even worry? Do we think that this is how the maintenance policy will be, or what? Let's bring our ideas. Okay.
I don't know, but I think in my own small way, I would suggest something. Yes. We have the chair UITS quality assurance. If they would brief us on exactly what it comprises, maybe based on that, we can ask a few questions that will help us answer Mami's question.
Okay, thank you.
So any of the committee members, maybe the chair or something, you brief us on what the UITS quality assurance is all about.
I think that we were introduced some time back by the former director. And in that introduction, we indicated what our mandate was. But essentially, it is to ensure quality for the UITS. So any list of activities that we think that we can do that will assure quality, we need to do that. One of the things that we can do and have done is conduct client satisfaction surveys. And if you don't get feedback from people on the use of your services, then you don't know whether you're actually moving forward or backwards. And we did that, and you realize that largely students are happy with our services, but one of the key things that they're not happy with is internet. And then one of the obvious problems is this login thing. They're trying to log in, it's not working, that sort of thing. So that is what we do. We meet as a committee quite regularly, and we discuss some of the challenges we have as a unit. So that committee is well represented in the fact that we have people from software, people from network, and then we discuss the problems we have. And through engagement with the director, we try and find solutions to some of the problems. So it's an ongoing thing. And one of the things that we also want to do is that after these series of workshops, we want to look at every unit and how we can assure quality in some of the things they do. If we take software, what processes can you use to ensure that you deliver a good product? There's this popular methodology, Scrum. You know, in software development, it's become very agile now. You can't use a typical waterfall model to develop software. You can't develop software as you would construct a building, where you have the foundation. Once the foundation is done, you cannot do anything about it. You have to move to the substructure and then the roof. But with software, sometimes you can break the whole foundation down and then start all over again. But the approach to software development is that it must be incremental. You create a feature at a time, because what is the use of creating a very, a software that, in your opinion, meets the requirements of the users, but when you deliver it, they say, I don't like it. So the approach is to deliver it piecemeal. You show it to the client, if he likes it, and then you continue. Then you get a new set of requirements. So those are methodologies that you can use to improve software delivery. So those are some of the things that we want to package and then have our people deliver it to you, so that you are introduced to some of these things. So in a nutshell, what I'll say is that our object is to identify the things that we don't have. And one of them is key, the strategic plan. It's one of the things that we did as a unit. We didn't have one, and now we have one, but I think you all know that we are in flux, we are in transition as a unit. So we've decided not to release that plan now. We want to try and consolidate all the things that are happening, and then we'll have one big strategic plan that moves us forward. So that is done. So that will be the basis for measuring, and that is quality assurance. You need to have a measure. You need to have a starting point. If you don't know what you're measuring, you'll be lost. So now that we have a plan with measurable items, we can now stick to that plan and say, okay, this year we plan to develop this software. Have we done it or not? This year we plan to improve email. Have we done it? And why do we improve email? You just don't get up and say you're improving email. It has to be founded on something. People have to, and that is where the survey comes in. And I like what Prof talks about feedback. And that is why the VC's vision to have a feedback app is so relevant. Because people see things every day. And they just walk by, they don't feel like reporting. But if you know you can go somewhere or online and then provide that feedback, that is a very good thing to have. So like the problem I described as Hayford, where I was saying that or suggesting that the place was smelling, I could have simply gone to the feedback app and reported that. And then that will be followed up. Or I can even decide to follow up. So those are some of the things we do. So as always, the work we do is not cast in stone. As with any employment, they will tell you that They'll list a number of things and they'll tell you any other thing was suggested by your heads of department. So we welcome feedback. Like I said, this is the start of a number of series of workshops and presentations that we hope to use to deliver quality to our unit. Thank you.
Okay, having been cleared on this, I don't know whether it's a suggestion or basically, if I'm understanding it well, it means that your core duty is to look at IT in general. So I don't know whether the maintenance committee would want to maybe incorporate a member or something so that that person would be the first point of contact, and then they liaise with the facility officer, then it moves on and on and on.
Thank you. Thank you. My bit is about two quick ones. The first is on the identification cards we give contractors. I've not seen one before though, but I'm just suggesting that probably if it's not done, then you have to look at it in terms of having a standard one. Else if you have it very, very variant, it will make it difficult for identification. So you can have some key features that maybe with the card we issue, KNUST logo should be there, and probably the name of the contractor, that will be changing, but the rest will all be constant, so that once you see it from far, you know this is issued from tech, so people cannot doctor it. That's the first one. And the second one is to do with having, I know there are labels of our structures, but we should go to label, even sometimes, some of the buildings don't have floor labels. So going to probably Casey Heffer building, but there's a fault on floor 2, but there's no name to it. And sometimes people have this confusion. Is it a ground floor? Is it a basement? That kind of British American system of floor identification is quite difficult. So we should have the floors labeled properly so that when someone sees a fault on the floor, you can actually report through maybe a system or go to the facility officer and say, okay, on maybe Sally's floor, room D8, there's a problem here. So it makes it easy for them to identify. And even going beyond the floors or within the building, going beyond, we can have proper labeling of even some of the external features, the streets, some parks and co, so that if you see a fault, or maybe the street in front of Kesley Hillford building, maybe street light 8, then you can actually pinpoint it, so there's a particular street light here towards this side, which can easily be identified by them. So that's what I'm thinking we can look at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Your suggestion is a very good one. And honestly, in Ghana, one of our biggest issues is the address system. That is why I'm happy with where I live now. If I order pizza, they easily get it to me. But before, I had to do a lot of landmark directions. And so what you said is very important. There may be a major fault, and even how to give the description is an issue. So thank you very much for that point.
Okay, I want to make a suggestion to, as Prof said, how we can make the policy work. As part of we identifying the people who come to work, I recently experienced something that I came to the office and then I saw somebody painting the burglar-proof gate. And I asked him who sent him. Then he said one man up there. He couldn't even mention the name of the person who even sent him to come and work. So if, as part of the policy concern, we can direct the people who come to work to seek consent of the leadership of the space, so that if anybody is to ask them, there should be consent of the head of the place, so that if the head knows about the person coming, that means that we can ascertain the authenticity of the person who is working. And then also, if the case of the facility manager, I don't think that we should go around searching for who the facility manager is. There are, like Mr. Azu said, there are several officers in the building. He can identify himself to not even the every staff, but to the leaders, the directors of the various offices, so that if they need something, maybe my office key is not working, I will tell my boss, and my boss will also refer to him to come and attend to it. So I believe that if we do that, then we can also cause to champion it. And lastly, whilst we advise us, I believe all the things that we've spoken about, the maintenance policy, is also known to the people who are championing it, because if they don't know it, then they will be saying that these people are stubborn people, they are now asking us to do this and that. So as we are being advised, they should be also advised. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've put it very well. In fact, I believe that, for example, if an elevator is out of service or some stalls in the washroom are out of service, the facility manager should be proactive and send emails or even notices to staff using that building. I think it's very, very important, and it should be incorporated. Thank you. Please, as we wait for the questions, I wanted to find out if you were going to employ the prioritization, forgive me, of the categories. For example, what is routine, emergency, and because I think people call you left and right? And they say everything is an emergency. I know yours for UITS, you are bombarded with that. So I thought you would pick on that one, the categorization, and maybe employ it. You know, there's the routine one, and then the emergency, and then what was the third one? This is an exam. What was the third one? Oh, nobody remembers. Periodic, yes. So, for example, if it's a periodic thing, something that you're going to do in the next 3 months, and they are on you that this is an emergency, I think you should be able to tell them that, oh, this is a periodic something. Or, that's what I think. Because I know you get calls like all the time, and people are always saying it's an emergency, but it's not an emergency. I mean, I'm one of the corporates, but I thought you would talk about it.
Anytime you design a scheme or a system and you give access to users to more so prioritize, they will always abuse it. Okay? So we're doing something small like that at the university hospital because we have a facility manager here. So when he reported, he asked of a small system. And the concept was this. You will report and you assign your priority, but he will reprioritize it because he will come and do a check. So if, let's say I report in my room that, okay, my air conditioning is spoiled, it's an emergency, he will come down, come and check, look at the fault. Probably it's water just which is dripping. It's not really an electrical issue. So if I stated it's an emergency, he picks whatever information he does, picks on that very place, then goes into the system and reassigns the actual priority. So with the priority abuse, it will come. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't be too much worried about it. But whoever is at the other end, who will come and do an actual check after getting the reportage, will do the final prioritization. And hence, will allot the time or the duration to take to have it fixed. So I think that's how it should be.
And do you give them feedback? For example, if, otherwise a person will say, I've called them the whole day, nothing is happening. So maybe if they also get to know that, oh, this is where we have put your complaints, then they can relax and wait.
Yeah. So when you report in the system, then he would, based on the system, will pre-sort the prioritization you have assigned, even though it's abused. Yeah. Then he checks them, he will follow up, he will print a time, what do you call it, a log sheet. You come around, okay, you stated room, this has air conditions, so and so. Sometimes what they even state may even be wrong. You may be thinking it's an electrical issue, but probably it's something you didn't even switch on. So he comes and sees that, oh, you didn't even do this properly. So it's not even a fault after all, okay? But sometimes they come down, they see that, okay, really it's a fault. Now the fault, you may be thinking it can be solved in a day, but he being the person who will link up with experts, you know that, okay, this can take maybe 2 days or 3 days. So he goes back to the system and allots the actual duration, which gives you the notification that you will solve your issue, but this is the time which it will take to. Okay.
Then, and this is at the university hospital?
Yes, please.
Then the facility manager and the people there are doing very well. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Please, somebody's comment is that she sees the maintenance thing doable. But her only problem is that once a new person comes in, how does the person know that there is these regulations, these standards there? Because she herself saw it somewhere and she felt that it was for contractors. So how would the university community know that there is something like this and it's a general notice for all?
Thank you. So as Prof mentioned, as part of, or by way of informing the entire university that these are the policies, we are Group G. There are a number of groups with different policies. So I'm sure you have presentation with some of the other groups. And another thing too is that for new staff, do we have any new staff here? Now, before you get your ID card, you take some exam on the university policies. If you don't pass, you don't get your ID card. Yes, I found that my mentee told me. I said, why are you sweating this afternoon? He said, I have to pass this exam before I get my ID, but I've been employed. So I think that's the way of letting it be known to the new staff, and then for those of us who are already in these seminars and workshops to let us know about the policies. Thank you. I think there's somebody at the back.
Thank you very much. Please, as part of your specific objectives of policy item bullet 3, it says ensure that high priority is given to safeguarding safety and security of students, staff, tenants, members of the public, employees and agents in their occupation and use of buildings and infrastructure on the university. Please, I have this concern. There are a number of times I've seen outsiders, members of the Kote community, the Diakon, youth who are not university students, come in and use facilities on campus. How do we first ensure that such things does not take place, and secondly, that they don't pose security to the threats to the infrastructure or to staff? Thank you.
Okay. I like what is happening, because now we are seeing that, all the university policies do not stand alone. They complement each other. We've talked about maintenance, but then this is a security issue that is coming in, and there's a security policy. But so this is not within the maintenance policy, but within the security policy. And since we've not gone into that, I cannot specifically speak to it. But the university is an open place. So in as much as we invite people to come in, we also have to make sure that people do not abuse facilities. And so we will note that down and let the group that deals with the security also think about it and see how it can be addressed.
Okay, Prof, please, just to follow up. So am I in the capacity as a staff of university to say stop somebody who is doing something? Say somebody is writing on the wall. Can I say, hey, stop? Am I empowered to do that?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, the person is defacing, this is a very obvious one. The person is defacing the property. And you are a stakeholder in the university. You have every right to tell the person that, please, stop this, But then you also have to make sure that your health, your safety is also guaranteed. The person is holding a knife. You don't go putting yourself in danger. Yesterday I met one lady, these torn jeans. I didn't know her, but I saw her and I said, Madam, please, are you coming for lectures? It wasn't even in my faculty, it was on the way. She said yes. I said, please, lectures are formal things. What you are wearing, you can take to the beach and everything, but please, next time don't bring it to lectures. He said, okay.
Thank you very much. You talked about the sources of funding. Then you also mentioned the the facilities to be maintained. So my question is, and you also said that we should always refer to the Director of Works. What if the cost of maintenance, I'm speaking this on the assumption that the cost is to be borne by the unit. Let's say if I'm in the Castle Hayford and there's a leader, I'm just giving an example, and there's a leadership. My understanding is it is that unit that's supposed to fund it whilst relating with the Director of Works. And there's this perception about the cost always being higher when you visit Director of Works. So in the event that something is not going on well in the building, you liaise with Director of Works and the cost is so high, it's beyond the unit. You will see that the units will just relax and can't do anything. Is there something in the policy that is going to equip some higher authority to fix the thing and let the unit pay at a highly subsidized price or cost?
Okay, thank you. I believe that all maintenance works, although are supposed to be reported to the Director of Works, as you said, is the unit or the department or the faculty or the college that pays. And you are aware that there are thresholds for each level. So, for example, the threshold of a spending officer who is an HOD is not as high as that of a dean or director or provost. And so it's not the Director of Works per se who is going to use his procurement committee. It goes through the normal system. So if it's faculty level, the faculty's procurement committee is going to handle it. And if it's above their threshold, it goes to the college. So and we also have the Vice Chancellor's threshold, of course, and there are things that the Vice Chancellor has to go to the national, the public procurement, whatever, at the national level. So I don't know where to situate the cost thing, but it's still, for example, as I mentioned, there's painting ongoing somewhere in the College of Health Sciences, and it's for a particular faculty, but looking at the threshold, it's being handled at the college level. So it's not the Director of Works per se. It was a college procurement system that's engaged. It's just that it has to be supervised. That's why it's important to have the site supervisors. They have to make sure that everything is in accordance with the standards of the university. And if you realize this university is not every color that is used to paint their buildings. So if your unit has some money to buy, let's say, neon green paint, the Director of Works will tell you, no, these are the colors that the university uses to paint the external walls. So it's a hand-in-hand thing, yes. And it's through the normal procurement procedure. I hope I've answered the question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Our resource persons will be here throughout the day with us till it's 1 o'clock. We would want to pause here and then move out for some fresh air and do some stretchings here and there.